been in a meeting where you were distracted or had some type of disruption to occur? How did it make you feel? And more importantly, were you prepared to handle it? If this has ever happened to you as a woman in leadership or any individual in the leadership industry, I have something for you today. I have a strategy that will help you to manage one of the most common meeting disruptions that you will experience as a leader. Now, I encourage you to stay until the very end of this video because you will want to get a pen and a paper and write this strategy down. Because if you can master how you manage this common disruption that actually happens in meetings, whether you are the host of the meeting or you're moderating or etc., it will automatically elevate not only your executive presence because other people are going to be watching you, but it also elevates and puts you at a higher level than your peers. So if this sounds like something that is the least little bit interesting to you, then feel free to like this video. I'm going to share with you over 20 years worth of experience as a C-suite executive, as a manager, a director, an executive coach, and a public speaker that will help you to fast track your career as a leader. Now, my main target audience is women in leadership. However, on the platforms that I have accounts on right now, I have women in leadership and men in leadership. So I'm glad to have everyone present, regardless of what your gender is. Leadership transcends gender, and this is information that is helpful to everyone. I tell my clients and I tell my audience all the time, people become great by how they communicate. So if you are ready to unlock your greatness, then watch this video until the end because you're going to learn some next level strategies that will set you apart from everyone else. Now, if you're watching this video right now, you are watching the replay, and I appreciate you so much for being here today and spending just a few moments of your time with me. There's typically a part in the lives here on YouTube where people will join. So give me just a few moments. When people join, I will say hello to them, greet them, and welcome them to the live and say hello, and then we'll jump into the most common disruption that comes up, and then we're going to talk about the strategy you can do to address meeting disruptions when they happen. So welcome. Those of you who are joining today, I appreciate you being here today. Today, you are going to learn about the most common meeting disruption that you will experience as a leader. And I'm going to share with you the strategy that will help you to overcome this disruption so that you will showcase your executive presence and stand out from everyone else as a leader. If this sounds like something you are interested in learning more about, then feel free to subscribe to the channel to learn more. Let me know where you all are joining from in the big, beautiful world today. Let me say hello. I have Nick GoGoX. Hello, Nick GoGoX. Welcome. Glad you're here today. Feel free to let me know where you are joining from in this big, beautiful world. And if you have any questions as it relates to how to address yourself as a leader, and specifically if someone is disrupting the meeting that you are hosting, then absolutely you're going to want to let me help you today. Learn from my over 20 years of experience. It will absolutely fast track you in your growth and make you stand out from everybody else. Now, the most common meeting interruption or meeting disruption that happens includes something that many people don't really think about. So I want to ask you, before I go into what the most common meeting disruption is, what do you think the most common meeting disruption is? Put it in the comments below. Let me know. I'd like to know what your thoughts are, what you think the most common meeting disruption could be, or what have you experienced as leaders that you've seen in the past? Let me know in the comments below. But I do want to say that the most common meeting disruption that you will probably experience as a leader is the most famous whisper. What I mean specifically by this is you as a leader are hosting a meeting. You're talking to people, you're engaging with your audience, and you're doing all of those leadership like tasks to help engage your team. But you always have that one person that is whispering to someone else. Has this ever happened to you all? I want to know, has this ever happened to any of you as leaders? I know personally, I am not the only one that this has happened to many times. And it's frustrating. It's very frustrating when you have done everything you need to do to prepare for your meeting. So for example, people, when they see leaders, sometimes they don't think about how much we prepare for our meetings and have that conversation that is happening. And what happens oftentimes is that people just think that you just got it and you just take care of everything. However, when someone starts whispering to someone else, it literally would throw you off track. So before I go into this more, and then also share with you specifically how you can address a meeting disruption. So when you have somebody that is whispering while you're giving your meeting, you want to know, how do you handle this as a leader and present yourself as an executive and really showcase your executive presence and how you're communicating. Before I go into that, let me say hello to those of you who joined. All right, Victory 10, hello, welcome, welcome. I have Bobby Rios, welcome, welcome. And Bobby Rios says, can you sing happy birthday? It is my mom. Well, I am actually under the weather, believe it or not. So Bobby Rios, happy birthday to your mom. We have Caleb Esqueda. Bro, what is this? Okay, so this is a conversation we are having about if you are a leader and you are hosting a meeting, what you can do when someone is disrupting your meeting. So specifically, the most common disruption that happens in a meeting, Caleb, is that people will whisper. So you'll have your meeting as a leader and you'll find somebody whispering off to the side of someone else. It is very, very, very distracting as a leader. And I'm going to share with you why this happens. And then I'm going to share with you also the best strategy you can do to address this that actually showcases this is how you're presenting yourself as an executive. So before I do that, let's go into the other comments. It's a vibe says, oops, I was going to subscribe. Then I realized this is a women's empowering channel, not for men. Well, actually it's a vibe. Believe it or not, I have a mix of men and women on my channel. So for me specifically, I focus with women in leadership in terms of my client base. But here on YouTube, the information transcends gender, if that makes sense. So it doesn't matter if you are a male or a female. Leadership doesn't judge you by gender. It's just ways that you have to handle things. So I have a lot of men on my channel. Would be happy to have you present on my channel. In terms of who I work with specifically is women in leadership, but a lot of the information that is here on my channel, especially on my lives, are going to be very, very helpful for you, regardless if you are a woman in leadership or a man in leadership. On my platforms and specifically here on YouTube, I have a mix of men and women. So it is a channel. If you look at my lives, a lot of information does talk about women, but you see a lot of information that is very, very specific to leadership. And as I mentioned, regardless of whether you're a man or a woman, I would be happy to have you here. So, all right, we have Caleb said, oh, okay. Yes, absolutely. Big Z, hello. Welcome, welcome. Glad you're back. Let me know if you have any questions. Good to see you again, as always. Okay, so we talked about the most common disruption that happens in a meeting, and that is when you have someone whispering. So this is for the individuals that just joined. If you are in a meeting, the most common disruption you're going to see is somebody whispering off to the side to someone else. It is distracting. It's frustrating. How do you deal with it? What do you do as a leader? How can you manage the situation? Because I will share with you, it is very important for you to do something. Why? Because if you are hosting a meeting, the meeting is not you and one person in this particular case. More than likely, it's a group of people. And so people are seeing you publicly and they're watching you as a leader. As I've said many times on my channel, when you are a leader, people are watching you. They're watching you in everything that you're doing, everything that you're saying, and etc. So this is something that I want to share with you, that you have to address this publicly. Because if you do not, it will automatically lower your executive presence in front of everybody that's in the meeting. And if you're watching this channel and subscribe to this channel, then you absolutely do not want to do that. So what do you do? So before I go into what you do, let me see what's in the comments below. Big C says, hey, sorry, I got kicked somehow. Oh no, I hope you're all right. I hope you're okay. I'm glad you're back, but I hope everything's going well. Let me know what's going on. So I'll wait for that response. But you have to deal with these situations publicly. You have to. You cannot, please, leaders, do not let somebody just talk that way in your meeting. It's very frustrating. So what happens is your team will actually feel like the person that's whispering is controlling the meeting, not you. And that's not what you want to have happen, especially as the leader. So I want to share with you what you can do when you have those situations come up. Now, we already know the most common situation, the most common disruption that you're going to experience as a leader in a meeting, if you're hosting it, is somebody whispering and talking to someone else on the side. We've talked about why this is a problem. This will definitely downplay your executive presence, and the people in the meeting are going to think that individual is whispering, and basically they're controlling the meeting, not you. That doesn't look good as a leader. So what can we do to help you be able to address this issue? Before I go into that, Big C says, I'm just getting home from work, tuning into you. Okay, well, thank you, Big Z. Well, I'm glad you're all right. I appreciate you being here today. Absolutely. So what can you do when you have this meeting disruption? Well, the first thing you need to do is observe. You have to observe. Now, there's times when there may be something that you say that someone just has something to say and they just have to say it to their buddy or their friend in a meeting. There are people like that. I've worked with people that just are those chatty individuals that just always have something to say. They just want to talk all the time. So if you see it happen once, I wouldn't worry about it. Honestly, I would not worry about it too much. These are the times when I would worry about it. If it's happening twice or going to 3 times, that's one scenario. So I would say maybe if you see it happening 3 times, I would definitely say something. Or if you start seeing people observing, looking at these individuals that are speaking, then that's when you immediately need to say something. Another scenario when you immediately need to say something is if the person who is whispering in a very audible way. So I've had this happen before in meetings where you have somebody that's whispering. It should be where you're not really hearing it. But if you have somebody that's whispering, hey, what's going on? I don't know. I don't know what's going on. If they're really loud, then you absolutely have to do something, because the people in the room are going to look at them and wonder, well, what's going on? And is the leader going to do something about this? So you definitely want to address those issues. So how do you do it? This is the best way that you can address those type of disruptions when they come up as a leader. Now, I will share with you that the information I mentioned to you before in terms of how many times and if it's someone that is being a bit louder, that's from my very humble experience I've had as a leader for the past 20 years as a C-suite manager and director and a public speaker. Now, I will share with you this particular strategy is something I picked up when I was doing the presentation mastery, and actually persuasive influence path with Toastmasters International. Many of you know that I'm a distinguished Toastmaster. So in Toastmasters International, it is the world-renowned public speaking and leadership organization. So with this organization, they have what's called a Distinguished Toastmaster Award, and they have about 358,000 members worldwide, and only 1% of them accomplish their Distinguished Toastmaster. So that means they go through a lot. They've done an extensive amount of public speaking, and they have done the best that they can to elevate themselves as public speakers. So I got this particular portion of the strategy I'm sharing with you from them in this particular path. Toastmasters is great, so this is something I want to share with you. When those situations come up and the person's whispering and you have identified that I have to say something. This person is whispering too loud, they're whispering too much, they're distracting the meeting, they're disrupting the meeting, then what do? The first thing that you need to do is to say something. Now, you may be wondering, well, what do I say if I'm in a meeting and someone's whispering and they're being loud? Well, that's why I hope that you're subscribed to this channel, because I will share with you these strategies, these more higher level advanced strategies to help you deal with these very complicated situations when they come up. So what do? The first thing I would do is I would say, excuse me, Mrs. Smith, excuse me, Mr. John, did you have something that you wanted to add? And stay silent. Now, most of you all know that I'm very big on silence, and silence is something that will absolutely help to set you apart from everybody else. So when these situations come up, as I mentioned, say, excuse me, Mr. Smith, excuse me, Miss Smith, was there something that you needed to add to the discussion? Stay silent. Usually Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith will not They will not expect you to say something to them when they're whispering. And so I have seen this happen. I've actually done this several times, and people will get caught off guard and they'll just, I'm sorry. I didn't have anything. Sorry about that. And then they will stop whispering. They will literally stop whispering for the most part. Now, if they continue to whisper, there's a second strategy that you might want to do. And I'm going to share that with you in just a moment, but let me go to the chat. Okay, so Christian Lopez. Hello, Christian. How you doing today? Welcome, welcome. Let me know what part of the world you're joining from today. And Forensic Accountant, welcome. Glad you are here. Welcome, welcome. Good to see you again. I have a video for you this week based on what we talked about confidential responses. So you are on my queue for this week. So I will definitely put that in the title so you know when to join. And even if you can't join live, I will absolutely give you a shout out in the video and then just check the replay. But really glad that you're here today, Forensic Accountant. Appreciate you being here and appreciate your support. So now let's say you've addressed this one time. You've already told this person, you've made it publicly known that I'm the leader and I need you to stop this disruption. You've already done that. And they stop. They say, oh, okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry about that. Let's say you continue with your presentation and now this person has completely just ignored what you said. It just went in one ear and out the other. What do you do? What do you do in this scenario? Well, the next thing that is mentioned in Toastmasters is to make the walk. So most of the time when you're in a meeting, you're probably going to be standing up to some extent. If you're standing up, then you may want to just very closely just walk around and make your way a little bit closer to that person that's whispering. And then in that case, you may want to say the same thing. Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure that everyone heard what you said. Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith, would you mind repeating what you said? And usually at that point, if you've had to address this twice in two different ways, one, you just said it publicly. Two, you're saying it publicly, but you're walking closer to them, they usually will stop. They typically will say, okay, oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about that. And they usually will, at that point, stop. Now, you have different situations that will come up sometimes. You see it in definitely with your public leaders and et cetera, when you have people that are hecklers and et cetera. If you want me to talk more about that, I'd be happy to do so. But you probably are not going to be dealing with hecklers at your job, depending on the role that you're in. If you're in a public type setting, where you're doing a town hall or a very large type of meeting, you may have people that heckle you. And hecklers are no fun. There's ways to address those type of situations as a public speaker. So we can always go more into that. If you'd like for me to, just let me know. All right, let me go back to the chat. So Big Z is from Dallas. Okay, all right, Big Z, welcome. Glad you are from Dallas. I am in the Sunshine State here in Florida. So we've talked about the most common disruption for those of you who are just joining. So the most common disruption that you're going to face as a leader is going to be the whisperer, the person who is whispering and just cannot control themselves. They have to talk to somebody during the meeting. The reason why this is an issue is because this is an opportunity for you to either showcase your executive presence or have your executive presence take a major hit, because the audience is looking to you as a leader to see what is the leader going to do in this semi-contentious situation. So this is a great time for you to showcase what you know and how you address difficult conversations that happen. And when you do this, the audience will automatically see you as the leader. And they will say, okay, this person really handled this situation very well. So you have to do this. If anyone challenges you or does something to disrupt your meeting publicly, you have to address it publicly. If you just let it go and say, oh, this person's they're just talking. Oh, it's so annoying. And you just continue with your meeting and act like they don't even exist, your audience is going to see that. And this is not the way that you want to showcase yourself as a leader. You absolutely don't want to do that. So we've talked about those two scenarios and then specifically what you need to do when this actually happens. Now, I want to know from you, as those of you who are joining today, have you ever been in a situation where you've been leading a meeting and you found that people have been doing disruptive things? Perhaps they were not whispering. Maybe they were doing something else. Let me know in the comments below what you all have experienced as it relates to those very disruptive type of meetings and situations that have came up. and we can talk about them. And we'll go over some strategies to help you address each one of those, because there's always a way to manage challenging situations. There is always a way. Oftentimes as leaders, we're just busy, and we feel like sometimes with public speaking, this is something that, oh, I need to do that for a conference or a TEDx event. And public speaking is something that you need in your everyday conversations, and especially in your meetings and even in your interviews, believe it or not. So let me know if you've experienced any of these challenges, or if you have any questions about this particular strategy that I mentioned. So you want to be polite. So there's those 2 times when you want to address the person. The first time, you have to figure out, do you need to address this? And I mentioned to you, for those of you who are joining now, you need to address this if the person is whispering multiple times. So let's say 2 to 3 times, and it's being disruptive. So you can tell that your audience is starting to look at this person to see, what are they talking about? Why are they talking? Or if they're whispering so loud that everybody can hear them and it's just completely disrespectful. So you have to say something. You have to determine if you're going to say something to them or not. And when you say it in a very polite way. You don't want to say, look, I'm talking and I want you to stop. That is not the way you present yourself as leader. Speak the way that you would want to be spoken to. Because maybe they're just excited, they had something happen in their life and they just want to talk about it. And they just so happen to be in your meeting. Say, excuse me. Excuse me is still polite, and say it in a very polite tone of voice. There's different ways you can monitor your tone of voice. I talk about that a lot on my channel here. So if modifying your tone of voice is something you want to learn more about to make you either sound more jovial or sound a bit more serious, then definitely check out some of my lives on my channel. But your tone of voice can actually help you quite a bit. So say, excuse me, is there something else that Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith, whoever, man, woman, whoever you're talking to, is there something that you want to add? And wait for them to add and stay silent. If they do it again, then go into the next strategy I mentioned to you in terms of you inching your way a little bit closer to them. Now, if you happen to be in a meeting setting where everyone's sitting down, you would just repeat yourself again, but not say the exact same statement you said before. You would want to say something along the lines of, Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith, I want to make sure everybody hears everyone's thoughts and insights. Would you like to share what it is that you're talking about? And they usually will, at that point, they'll stop. They will completely stop. So let me know what your questions are about this. Let me look in the chat because I saw something come up. Okay, Forensic Accountant says, how does one address it when the meeting's leader does it? That's a really, really, really good question. So Forensic Accountant, that says, you're amazing anyway. So we've already had conversations about leadership, so I know you're at that next level of leadership anyways. Now, so how do you want to address it when the meeting leader doesn't? Well, the bigger question is, why is the meeting leader not addressing this? So there's typically, when meeting leaders don't address that type of situation, there's typically some office politics going on there, or they may not be at that level that you are a forensic accountant as a leader to where you can say, I'm going to address this issue. So if you want to do that and you want to address it, not as the leader, but as someone that's there, guess what happens, forensic accountant? Then you are going to be seen as a leader of the conversation automatically. Because if you say something about it, people are going to say, oh, this is the person that's dealing with the hard situation. And this is what leaders do. We deal with very challenging situations. So there's a couple things you can do. First, if you are relatively close to the person, eye contact is a very important thing. So you don't want to necessarily just stare someone down. However, if you are staring at them, people kind of feel like somebody's watching them at some point in time. So you may just want to glance at them and just look to see basically what are you saying? The other thing that you can do to showcase yourself as a leader, if your leader is deciding not to address this, you could do this. You could raise your hand or say, excuse me, I know that Mrs. Smith, Mr. Smith, whatever, are speaking. I didn't know if they had something else that they needed to say. So you would basically say something similar, but you want to get the attention of the room to say, I'm the leader, I'm speaking, and these two people over here are being disruptive. That's how I would personally do it if it's bothering you. If it's just something to keep in mind, especially when you have those situations come up, because ultimately your leader should be doing that. Your leader should be the one that's handling this situation and moderating it and addressing it. But if they're not, then they have you as the person that will be able to take care of it. And I hope that you are being compensated for dealing with these type of situations, because you should be. So that's what I would do. I would just kind of look at the person first, because people can somewhat see that someone's looking at them. And then I would say, excuse me, leader. So you would acknowledge the leader. So always acknowledge the leader, because they still are the leader of the conversation. So you could say, excuse me, Mr. I don't know, Mr. Smith, Mr. Jones, or whatever. You could say, excuse me, Mr. Jones, I believe that Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith have something that they wanted to say. And then hopefully forensic accountant, the leader will say, oh, Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith, do you have something to say? Now, let's go down the rabbit hole a bit more. What if Mr. Smith and Mrs. Smith, they don't have anything to say? Well, you did the best you could. People are going to automatically pay attention to you because you brought an issue to light that everybody in the room more than likely wants to be addressed. Because from what I have experienced as a leader, when people are in meetings, they just want to listen to what's being said so that they can prepare themselves for their task or etc. When people get distracted, sometimes they'll get on their cell phones and they'll start scrolling, or they may be taking care of something. But for the most part, people do want to hear what's being said so they know how to prepare themselves accordingly for whatever role or project or task that you're working on. And it is very disruptive when you're trying to intently, trying to lean in and listen to what someone's saying, and you have Mr. Smith and Mrs. Smith just having a conversation like they're talking outside. So I hope that is a strategy that you can use in the future. If that comes up when the leader doesn't say anything about it, you can still address the issue by one, just kind of glancing at the person, trying to get their eye contact, just looking at them to see what's going on. Then, or you can ask the permission of the leader. Excuse me, leader, it seems like Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith have something that they wanted to add to the discussion. And then at that point, it's back to the leader. The leader has to address it. You've done your part to actually do what you can to showcase yourself. Now, I will tell you that when you do those type of more advanced level type of communication skills and communication styles and addressing those complex situations, forensic accountant, it is automatically going to elevate your executive presence. So the next time when you have that situation come up, then you absolutely are going to be seen as that executive that you already are, because we've already had conversations on my channel before. But you're going to be at that level where people are going to look to you to say, you know what? We have an issue, forensic accountant is going to deal with it. And that's what people want when they have a leader. They want someone that is confident. They want someone that is not afraid to say what the problem is in a very respectful type of way. So I hope that helps you. This is personally what I would do in a situation. But ultimately, the bigger question is, why is the leader not dealing with this? They may not, and they likely are not on your level, forensic accountant, to handle that. And they probably definitely not subscribed to my channel, because if they were, then they would know how to handle these challenging situations, or at least get a sense as to what they need to do. Okay, so we have Wanderson and Tunes. Hello from Brazil. Okay, hello, Wanderson. Welcome. Glad to have you here today. A forensic accountant says, sound advice as usual. Absolutely, you're so welcome. I appreciate that. I appreciate you asking that question, because we are all in different situations, and I talked about this last week, where there's times when you may be in interview settings, or you may be in leadership roles, and the individuals that you are directly reporting to, they are not on your level. And I don't mean that in a very mean type of way, but there's different levels of leadership. And you may be that person that is already very advanced, you're already very skilled, you're knowledgeable, you know how to communicate very well. And I know this by our communication on the channel, but you may have individuals that you are working with that you are potentially reporting to that are just not there. So what do you do in those interim time periods? You continue to shine like the superstar that you are. That's what I tell my clients all the time. Continue to shine, continue to do the best that you can. I personally have dealt with this. I've dealt with this many times over my career. And sometimes what'll happen is you start to outgrow your role. And you outgrow your role and you outgrow your organization, and it's time for you to move on. Because I found when I was working in a manager type of role, a more executive type role, this actually happened to me. Not necessarily when the leader didn't speak up, but I found myself being at a higher level in terms of how I communicated with other people, while my direct peers, I would say, not my direct reports, but my peers that I'm working with, were not communicating at that higher level also. And so a lot of things would happen. Many tasks would be left behind, or they may just not speak to each other in a proper way. They would talk about inappropriate things that are not really relevant in a workplace setting. No one cares about what you did over the weekend. We're talking about business. We have work. We have pay. We have people to take care of. We have businesses to run. We have clients to take care of. And you find yourself sometimes feeling a bit lonely when you're in those situations. But I encourage you, if you experience something like I did personally, because I've experienced this a couple times in my career, you just have to keep elevating yourself. You have to keep elevating yourself and elevating yourself, and learn as much as you can, and still work on your executive presence, work on how you're communicating, regardless of if your manager is on your level or not, because ultimately you're going to surpass them anyways. And then the other thing that people don't really talk about sometimes on YouTube is that when you get to that level, and I'm sharing this with you from my very humble opinion and my own personal experience. And this is why on my channel, I really do share with you real advice, real strategies, real situations that will happen. I'm not here to tell you about, the leadership theories, the leadership models and hypotheses. No, I'm here to share with you what really, really, truly will happen when you start to elevate yourself and go to that next level and perhaps surpass whoever you are directly reporting to. The person you are reporting to will sometimes become very intimidated by you. And when that happens, it makes the workplace dynamic very, very awkward, because you have basically surpassed your master, if that makes sense. If you've watched karate movies and things like that, the student surpasses the master. And then what happens? Most of the time, the master is happy. But then sometimes in workplace settings, the master is not happy. They're like, what? I'm the leader here, not you. How are you able to do all these things? And unfortunately, this happens in the wonderful world of leadership. And these are situations and scenarios that people don't really talk about because they just don't know what to say, or maybe they just are not in a place where they feel comfortable talking about it. I'm not in those situations anymore, so I'm very comfortable sharing with you what's happened to me personally. I've been in situations where I've started to elevate, and I've done a lot more than my direct manager. And we had issues. My manager became very intimidated by me, and that happens. I decided to find another place, and I transitioned from there. And that is actually one of the reasons why I'm here with you all right now, is because I had to make a decision for myself personally that I have to be able to do what I want to do in my career and be able to empower as many people as I can to help them go to the next level, especially helping them to be able to develop those very advanced, very, very strategic communication skills that will help them be able to handle those very contentious situations. There's a lot of things on YouTube that talk about leadership development, and these are the things that you should say and how you should do it. But let's talk about what really happens. Let's talk about those hard situations that come up. That's why I talk about them here on my channel. So let me see what happened. Okay, so Forensic Accountant says, that has happened. I was 19 years deep into my career before I found the right boss. Yes, exactly. And I appreciate you so much for sharing that, because this happens. And people in Forensic Accountant, you let me know too, because this has happened to you and this happened to me too. People don't really talk about it like that. They really don't, because there's a part where they're just not quite sure of what they want to say. But yes, this actually will happen. And for those of you who are, perhaps new to leadership, or in the middle of your leadership journey, or perhaps you're at the end of your leadership journey, you have to keep this in mind. there's a balance. There's always a balance when you're working for somebody else. There's always something that's going on. There's a lot of things out of your control. But just like forensic accountant said, this actually does happen. And it took a forensic accountant a long time to be able to really find the right boss. And the right boss in these type of scenarios is going to be that boss who is very comfortable in his or herself and wants you to succeed. They want you to do better than they are or doing in their particular role. That is a type of boss that you want to have. These type of bosses, they're few and far between. And I think forensic accountant would probably agree with me too, especially since it took 19 years to really find that. They're very few and far between. Just, this is why we need leaders like you all. We need leaders like forensic accountant in the world today, because we really need individuals who are genuinely wanting people to do well. There's this, sometimes in leadership, what happens is there is this entitlement that leaders have. And some leaders feel like they are at the top of their particular career when they become the leader or whatever they are. They could be a C-suite executive, they could be a VP, they could be a manager, they could be a director, they could be a lot of other things. And so they have this entitlement where they feel like, okay, well, I have arrived. I'm at the manager level and I have to hold on to this for very dear life, and no one is as smart as I am. Now, maybe I don't need to say that, but this is reality what happens. I've worked with C-suite executives. I've worked with those higher level leaders. And yes, sometimes they think like that. They really do. You heard that here on this channel. They really think like that. And when they have those mindsets, then individuals who try to elevate themselves or are continually excelling, they struggle with that. Initially, and I don't know if this happened to a forensic accountant before, but initially they're okay with it because you are probably driving results or driving revenue or doing something that is helping the organization to grow as a whole. And they're like, wow, this person is a superstar. They're doing fantastic. But then it gets to a point where you just keep doing so well. They're like, wait a second, you're doing so well, but you're doing better than I am. I don't think I like that. And then that's where you start having that problem happen back and forth. And they start feeling a bit more intimidated. They start giving you a hard time. They may start to, I would say, be a lot more nitpicky in terms of what you're doing, what you're working on, and etc. I'm telling you this from personal experience because this happened to me. Okay, forensic accountant said, yes, they are. Yes, that is true. It is. They're really hard to find that type of bosses. So when you are in your interviewing phases, you have to really ask some questions in your interview as it relates to the positions you're applying for, because you need to know about them just as much as they know about you. And oftentimes you will not know that your boss is like that at the very beginning. Most of the time your boss is going to have their very best face forward. They're going to be very, very supportive in the beginning. But then as the months go by, you see things start to change, or maybe not even months. It may take years. In my case, I noticed it months and years when those type of situations occurred. So you always want to be observant. And that is probably one of the most important strategies I would say that anyone as a leader needs to master, and that is to observe. Observing will tell you when your boss or your supervisor is having a problem with your growth. Observing will tell you in a meeting if people are listening to you or they are not paying you any attention. Observing in a meeting will allow you to know who is talking to who and what type of conversations they may be having outside of the room. It all comes down to observing, and being silent is sometimes one of the best strategies you can have. Now, I do not advocate for you to be silent all of the time. Please don't do that. You need to speak up. There's situations that come up where you need to express yourself, or you need to at least address an issue. Just as forensic accountant mentioned earlier, what happens if the leader doesn't say anything and you have someone disrupting a meeting? That's a perfect time where you need to say something. But there's often times where if you just observe the room, you'll start to see who's having conversations with who, how the individuals interact with each other. Are they very friendly with each other, or do they just completely don't look at each other? Do they barely speak to each other? Observing and being that quiet observer will tell you a lot about a room. It tells you a lot about your dynamics. It's the the best skill that you can actually master as a leader, because it helps you to read people. And this is something I have on my LinkedIn profile. People say, well, how do you read people? You have to observe them. Same thing if you're working for a federal agency or you're working in law enforcement. You have to really observe what is going on. You have to pay attention. So having that very heightened level of observation will always serve you very well in your role. So forensic accountant said, I worked in a setting where I was the only man and one of only 3 Black employees. Yes, so there's a lot of observation in that. I'm sure that you noticed, and I appreciate you so much for mentioning that, forensic accountant, because that can be a challenge in itself, especially if you are the only man in the role. I mean, we talk about different things that happen with women. It happens to men too. It just depends on the setting, because even when you are, and I've worked in situations where we have, let's say, a workforce that is mostly women, and then there's the one man that's there. There's all kinds of things that happen that you just have to just be just very careful just around different people. And that is always a challenge. And especially if you're only one of 3 Black employees, that can be challenging too, especially if you're in a pretty big environment. And so you have to really observe everyone. I tell my clients all the time, when you go into a job and you're thinking, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. Just take a moment and stop and just spend time watching people and observing what is going on, who is speaking, how, when they speak to each other, are they laughing? Are they crying? Or what are they joking around? What happens? I actually did this as in the C-suite. I used to do this all the time because I wanted to know, well, what are these conversations people are probably having when I'm not around? And so I was able to figure out a lot of information by just observing and seeing how this person talked to this person. Oh, I hear that they are talking about how the Chinese food they ate over the weekend was delicious. Okay, well then if you're talking about Chinese food you ate over the weekend that was delicious, then obviously you spend some time with each other. So I know when I have an issue or something that comes up, there's a high possibility you're probably going to talk to your friend about it. Now, would I know that if I didn't observe? No, I probably wouldn't know that. That's why you have to observe, not only with your eyes, but you have to observe and listen with your ears to those conversations that are happening. Because when people get together, they just like to talk. And so positioning yourself as that executive is going to absolutely put you in that situation where, yes, you are presenting yourself like that. You know what's going on. You have a good intuitive sense of what's happening, because most people do not take time to observe. They just don't. And that there's a couple of things, strategies that every leader should master if you're trying to elevate yourself to that next level. And I say this because I've noticed that people are not comfortable with these 3 things and the 3 strategies. And if they're not comfortable with it, you will automatically stand out as a leader if you can elevate and become comfortable with it. 1 is public speaking. People are not comfortable with public speaking, so definitely make sure that you are at that level where you're speaking better. And if not, you can reach out to me and we'll talk about it. 2 is eye contact. People really struggle with eye contact. They don't know how to do it. And 3 is silence. People struggle with silence. So I would say with eye contact and silence, observation is factored into there as well. So if you can master these very important character traits or strategies and techniques, it automatically sets you apart. And it not only sets you apart visibly to other people, but you as a leader, you're going to know a lot more than what other people are willing to tell you. So forensic accountant said it was 3 out of 60. So 3 out of 60 is a lot. That's a lot of employees to work with in that type of setting. So how did you manage that? That is a question I would want to know, because that's always a challenge. And when you're in that type of setting, when you're a very small number out of a very large number, because 60, in my opinion, is a decent size. That's a large size organization, or a medium size at least. So forensic accountant says it becomes immediately clear when there is no interest in your growth and development. Yes, it does. And the reason why it becomes immediately clear in terms of what forensic accountant mentioned is they will not want you to do more innovative type of projects or forward thinking projects. And it does become clear. You may say, I think that we need to launch this type of project or this type of initiative or whatever the case may be. And if your company is saying, no, I don't think we should do that, then that may be a concern. Now, sometimes there may be budgets, of course, associated with that. But if it's something that is directly related to your growth and development, it is something that will automatically cause you to have a problem there. And I will share with you one of the things that happened to me personally that forensic accountant is talking about that I was just talking to one of my clients about yesterday, but I'll share that in just a moment. So forensic accountant said, I learned what my boss didn't know and exploited the knowledge gap. That's how you do it. Exactly. That is exactly how you do it. I've been in that situation before. And what happened, forensic accountant? I would like to know. So those situations do come up. You do have to identify the knowledge gap. What is that gap that you need to showcase yourself? Because what happens is this is in terms of what forensic accountant is talking about. And these are more, I would say definitely more advanced level type of strategies. This is something that your very new leaders that may be watching this video, this is something that might not be the best thing for you to do just yet. You're just getting yourself into the wonderful world of leadership. But what forensic accountant is talking about is definitely more of a higher level, advanced type of skill. Yes, so when you're able to modify and see where those missing pieces are, then you can showcase yourself as the leader, as the executive that is the expert in this particular field. So this is a very good strategy to help you with career growth. And you always have to be mindful of the boss. What's going to happen with the boss? Are they going to be intimidated, or what's going to happen? Because sometimes people will start to become intimidated when situations like that happen. So forensic accountant said it was my ticket to the next level. Yes, that has happened to me too. So I appreciate you sharing that. And this will automatically put you at the next level because people will see, there's a gap in this right now. Forensic accountant is addressing it. Well, let's make forensic accountant go to that next level. Let's promote forensic accountant to whatever else that it is that you were promoted to. But it will actually help you to advance to the next level. And so I'm really glad, forensic accountant, that you mentioned this, because this type of dialogue that we're having is what is not happening on YouTube. People are not having these fluid conversations about, okay, this is what happens. These are ways that you can advance yourself in a career. You're not trying to undermine anybody and be that way, but you have to be able to showcase your expertise at all times, because ultimately it's going to help you in your career, whether you're in the role that you're in or advancing to another role. You still want to always be learning. And you would be so surprised how many people here are on YouTube that are content creators like myself, or maybe have reached a very high level in their careers and etc., how they still do not feel as if they need to learn anything. I personally have dealt with people that have said, oh, well, no, I don't need help with that, or I don't want to learn anything about that, because they feel like they're at that level. And I will tell you right now, this is one of the fastest ways to completely stunt your growth as a leader, by thinking that you know everything in one specific topic. You can be an expert and know a lot about it, but you still should be at a place where you always want to learn. I know personally, I always want to learn, even though I've been a public speaker for 20 years. I have been on the news. I've given Florida State congressional testimony. I have been online. I've done a lot. And I've done Distinguished Toastmaster with Toastmasters International. I've done a lot. But still, I want to learn. And so as a leader, you should always be wanting to learn as much as you can. So forensic accountant said, the fun part is when my boss's boss asked me to teach others what I had learned. That is true executive presence right there in leadership. When that happens, that is showcasing yourself at that next level. So for those of you who watch this video, whether you're watching it now or watching the replay, this is exactly how you advance. Sometimes what happens in our careers, in our businesses, and etc., there's this quiet time. There's this quiet time where you're just head down working. I mean, you're learning as much as you can, but then you get to the point where you start to advance, not only just overall, but in your mind too, and people start to notice it. And forensic accountant, that is when your executive presence comes to the forefront, to the center, and that's when people start to really notice that you're able to provide some value. And this is what we talk about on my channel in terms of those advanced level communication skills, developing your executive presence so you can be at that next level and communicate at a higher level than your peers. So yes, I exactly know what you meant. I know you put was, so yes, I understood what you meant. So I wanted to mention one thing about what a forensic accountant mentioned earlier, is that you can immediately find out if a company is interested in your growth and development. So many of you do not know this, and this is not something I've actually publicly shared on my channel often. I don't think I've ever actually shared this. Actually, I have not. So this is something that many of you do not know, and I want to share with you why you can immediately pick up on when a company is not interested in your growth and development. So many of you do not know that I am a dentist. So many of you may know that I have practiced dentistry for a long time, but I've in a transition where I'm an executive coach and I do a lot more consultant and strategy and etc. So this is why I'm here with you on YouTube. Before that time, my career path was not in the dentistry world. I never thought about being a dentist in my entire life, ever. And my career path, believe it or not, forensic accountant, was in forensics. So I was at a place where I wanted to be a forensic DNA analyst and work for the FBI. That was my career goal. That's all I wanted to do. I literally ate, slept, and breathed forensics for my undergraduate career and etc. So I did that for a long time. And I applied to a couple graduate programs and specifically in forensics, and it just did not work out the way that I wanted to. So I ended up transitioning to a forensic DNA analyst job. And so I have a whole story that goes with how that transition happened, all of that, but I don't want to take our time on the live to talk about that. But if you want to know more about it, let me know and I'll do a video specifically about that, because it's a very interesting story about divine timing and how things just sometimes don't line up. But anyways, I transitioned to a forensic DNA analyst position. Well, I was actually DNA technician. So I was working my way to be a forensic DNA analyst. And what happened is I applied for a couple graduate programs in New Orleans at the time. I was in New Orleans, and I applied for the Master's of Science in Public Health at Tulane University. I was accepted into the program, and I was really excited about it because, as I mentioned, I'd applied to some forensic-based specific master's programs, and it just did not work out. It just did not work out for me. Was not accepted into those programs, so I just thought, okay, well, maybe this is not the path for me, but I'll just go a different way. So when I was able to be accepted into the program at Tulane University for the Master's of Science in Public Health, I was ecstatic. I was really, really excited. And I thought, this is me being early in my career, I thought my employer would be ecstatic too. That's what I thought. But in actuality, it did not happen that way. So let me tell you what happened and why you can immediately determine if your company has an interest in your growth and development. Now, I had a conversation with my boss's boss at the time. Talked to him and said I was accepted into the program. It was not going to modify my work schedule whatsoever, because at that particular time in my life, I was working Tuesday through Saturday. And I had Sundays and Mondays off. Mondays were going to be my class days, and then the rest of the week I would work. And then, of course, work and do my academic studies, etc. So it would not impact my work schedule at all, but I needed to let them know that in the evenings on Tuesdays, I needed to leave at a certain time. So I couldn't just stay past 5 o'clock. I need to leave at 5 o'clock. That was it. That was the only thing. That was only my change, which I didn't think was a big deal. So my boss's boss said, sure. He said, okay, that's great. That's fantastic. Well, congratulations and etc. Now, my direct supervisor had a big problem with this. And he pulled me into his office and had a conversation with me. And he told me that, well, my boss's boss said that you were going to be going to a graduate program. And I said, yes, I am. And he said, well, that's not acceptable. And so I said, it's not acceptable? I wasn't as astute as I am now then. So I really was completely devastated. Now I would have just completely brushed it off. But at the time, I was completely devastated. My direct supervisor said, that is not acceptable for you to go to school. It is not acceptable for you to go to this program. We did not move you here, because at the time I was living in North Carolina. We did not move you here for you to go to school. Literally verbatim, that is what this man told me. So I left and what happened? So my audio video just went out for just a second. So I'm back. I'll have to take a look at the replay to see what happened or what you all heard. But he told me that if this part was missed, that it was unacceptable for me to go to the graduate program, and they did not fly me and move me out there to go to school. Period. So I left work at that particular time, and I was devastated. I was completely devastated. As I mentioned, that was early on in my career. I had just completed my bachelor's of science, and I was working in a DNA sequencing lab at the time before I ended up moving to New Orleans to work at the forensics DNA lab. And I was really devastated, and I had to make a decision. I had to decide, this company itself they do not care about my growth, obviously. I would think that if I'm applying for a master's program and I'm advancing myself as a professional, that they would care. I didn't ask for a day off. I didn't say I couldn't come to work. I said it would not impact my schedule. One day I just need to make sure I leave on time. That's it. That was it. And I made a decision, and my decision at that time was to not pass on the opportunity, and I went ahead and stayed at the job. And so I stayed there. I worked full-time there, and I did full-time school. It did not interact with my schedule. I did it quietly, and no one knew except one person at my job who was very kind, and she actually introduced me to the master's program because she had just completed it. And I worked that for several months, and it was hard. It was full-time work, full-time school, and if any of you all have ever done that, it is difficult. It's very, very difficult, especially in a master's program. When you're in a doctorate program, you might as well just forget about doing that. It's impossible to do. So what happened, I made the change because there was a shift in a contract. So we were working on a couple contracts with some convicted felons. Of course, I can't go into detail the states and all that, but we were processing DNA samples for them. And the contract was a big contract, so I was going to have to work Monday through Friday instead of Tuesday through Saturday because of the way the contract was. And at that point, I gave my notice and went full-time into my public health program, and I learned about dentistry, and then the rest is history, so to speak. Well, not history, but there's a lot more stories that go along the way. But I say this because Forensic Accountant mentioned something very important, is that they will let you know immediately if they care about your growth and development. And in my case, they let me know immediately. They did not care. The boss's boss did not have a problem with it. He was the owner of the company, but the supervisor is the one that didn't like it. And so when the supervisor didn't like it, he talked to his boss, and basically convinced him that no, you can't go to school. So they didn't think I was going to school at all because I just said, okay, well, whatever. But little did they know I was actually going to school, and I did something different. So they had no idea. So Forensic Accountant said, wow, yes, that is true. Forensic Accountant said, your story sounds like mine. Oh, really? Okay, feel free to share. Forensic Accountant said, it sure did. I lost you, and I was hot about it. I know. Sometimes it goes out like that on YouTube. I'm a part of their live streamer research panel now, just because I do so many lives here on YouTube. So I know there's a point where they reach out to us as content creators to help them with live streaming on the platform. So this is something that I definitely will mention to them about this. I believe this will be resolved this upcoming week because I'm actually going to do recording a little bit differently. So yes, audio went out, but nonetheless, everything is where it needs to be. So Forensic Accountant said, right, my third level manager had to intervene on my behalf, and my second level manager still denied me. Then my third manager got hot. Oh no. Needless to say, I experienced no more interference. Interesting. It's interesting how those type of situations will basically how they end up going. It's good that at least you had your third level manager that had to intervene, and it's just your second level manager denied you. So sometimes it's those middle managers. It's the middle managers that are the ones that are they're just holding on to their control for just dear life. And this is exactly what I was talking about earlier in the live, because you are going to have those leaders. And Forensic Accountant, what was mentioned specifically that he experienced is exactly what I was saying. You will have those managers that are those individuals that are thinking, I'm a leader, I'm a manager, I have officially arrived, I am the king, I am the queen, and whatever I say goes. And it always ends out just very, very complex and very challenging. And I'm glad that at least for you, forensic accountant, that it actually worked out in your favor. But these type of situations happen in the workplace setting. I have seen employers do this. They may not want you to advance in your career because they want you to be at work. In my case, the employer that I worked for, they specifically made it very clear they did not move me out there from New Orleans to Louisiana to go to school. They moved me there to be a worker. And so that's basically what they were letting me know. But ultimately, God had a bigger plan, and my career trajectory changed. I did not go into forensics as I had wanted to for my entire life. I ended up going into dentistry, and then now I'm here with you. So if all of these things did not actually happen in their own way, then that divine timing would not have happened, and I literally probably would not be speaking with you right now. So everything happens for a reason, and when you have those situations that come up, and for those of you who are watching the replay, I'm thinking about resumes because I have a client I got to work with this later today. But when you're thinking about reflecting on your career, sometimes these situations come up, and just like forensic accountant mentioned, you're going to have those defining moments in your career where it feels like the sky is falling and you feel like you are dealing with the most contentious type of situation. But I want to encourage you that these situations, when they happen, they will actually put you in a place where you will not only showcase your executive presence, but you're going to learn a lot about yourself and what you do. And so in my case, I learned that, okay, I was devastated. And I was devastated. I will admit that I cried, and I'm not the crier, and I'm not the crier, and I definitely am not the crier now. But this was early on in my career, and I was completely devastated because remember, I'd applied to so many master's programs in forensics, and it did not work out for me. So for me to apply to a master's program, it was in public health, and it worked out to me. That was a really big deal for me. And this is just me sharing personally with you all because you're part of my audience, and I want you to get to know me just like I'm getting to know you. But it was a big, I can't say how big of a blow that was for me because it was like huge. I was like, I can't believe that these people felt like this. So I cried for maybe about 2 or 3 minutes. And then after that, I said, okay, forget it. I'm just going to have to go to school. I have to figure out and work this out. So I just got it together. And that's what happened because I was so incredibly frustrated that my employer did not want me to advance myself in my career. Okay, so forensic accountant said, look at you now. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's been definitely very, very interesting for sure. And so forensic accountant said, I can't wait until I retire so I can exit from the shadows. Exactly. Exactly. And forensic accountant said, I have a lot to share. Absolutely. And we all have different type of stories like that that have happened in our career. And so it's really good to have this type of dialogue because when people are watching videos, they come back and watch the replays if they can't join live. And ultimately, sorry, my audio went out again in video. The conversation that we're having right now are conversations that I'm definitely going to have on my podcast. I plan on launching a podcast. It's going to actually be really soon. And I plan on having conversations with leaders and etc. just to talk about these situations as it relates to communicating in those very challenging scenarios that happen. We talk a lot. There's a lot of things on YouTube about it, but I want to have a dedicated podcast. And this podcast is going to be leaders in general, from males and females. So it's not like a specified gender podcast. I just want to have conversations with leaders that have had to develop those next level communication skills to manage those very complex situations, because we don't talk about it that much. There's not a book out there that says, this is what you do when your second level manager gives you a hard time and your third level manager is okay with it. There's not a book that says this is how you deal with these challenging situations. There's not a book that says this is what you should do if you have applied and been accepted to a graduate program and your manager tells you that it's unacceptable for you to go to school while you're working for them. There's not books out there for these type of conversations, but these are important conversations. These are real conversations and real situations that actually do happen in the wonderful world of leadership and in our careers. So just sharing light to it will help other people as they are navigating through these situations, because I'm sure, forensic accountant, when that happened to you, you was not happy. I'm sure you were not, just like I was not happy when that happened to me. So other people can learn from the experiences that we talk about on the channel, because we've had a lot of great dialogue with forensic accountant, and I know some other individuals also on the channel, to really help you be able to get to that next level in your career and not make mistakes that I personally have made, or develop those strategies that I wish I had at that time. At that time, I wish that I was definitely had an executive presence. That was when I graduated from undergraduate, which is a long time ago. That was in the 2000s. So that was a very, very long time ago. And I didn't even know what executive presence was. I had no idea what that was. But at that time, I could have really used it, because when he told me that, I didn't. I was so much in shock. I didn't know what to do. I just said, okay, and I just left. And then I was upset, like I mentioned. I was upset, and then I said, okay, I'll be fine. God will work it out, and He did. All right, and forensic accountant said, I wasn't only unhappy, I was broke. Yes, and that can factor into a lot too, especially finances also, when you have that type of situation, because it's like a combination of multiple things. You have your workplace issues going on, and then you have financial issues going on, and then it just affects you in your head, and it makes life stressful. It makes it so stressful. So the really good thing is for everyone to keep in mind is that these situations will come up. And so just forecasting yourself and trying to get yourself in a better position where you can just place yourself where you are diversifying your income, or your levels of income, or your streams of income, is something that many people talk about that are millionaires and etc. I know one of my favorite books is Rich Dad Poor Dad, but being able to set yourself up to where you have income coming from different places. So when you have those scenarios that come up with your employers and jobs, it doesn't hurt you as much, because I've been in that situation too very early on in my career, when you are not at the place where you have as much as you like to have, and then you have a lot of things happening. So it's really important to do that as best you can. Sometimes as leaders, and when we're in these type of professions like forensic accountant is obviously in forensics, and that's where I wanted to go for my career for the longest time. When we're in these professional roles, they are very much involved. There's a lot you have to learn. There's not only a lot you have to learn, but there's a lot that you have to do. And sometimes that goes into our lives, into our life after work, in terms of what we learn and how we learn it, and etc. So a lot of our time is being devoted to our professions. And it makes it hard for us to really have that foresight to say, I should really start thinking about diversifying my income. You may not necessarily want to be an entrepreneur. You don't have to necessarily, but you should think about having other streams of income also as you are a professional, because this is one of the reasons why I've seen a lot of leaders that I've worked with in the past, why they end up struggling as leaders, because they've invested so much of their education, so much of their careers, and etc. to being in these type of roles, that this is the only income they have, and this is all that they do. I say that not only from my clients, but for me personally. I've made that mistake many, many times in the past. I don't do it as much anymore, because we learn from our experiences, we learn from our mistakes. And I know when COVID happened, I definitely had to make a huge change in my career, which is the reason why I'm with you all right now. So having those diverse streams of income are very helpful. There's all kinds of ways, there's all kinds of things out there now that there's a ton of things on YouTube about, in terms of just diversifying your streams of income, really thinking about what is that skill that you have that you could potentially monetize to help you whenever those rainy days happen. That's just my very, very humble opinion. I would encourage anyone that is in a leadership role to please, yes, you have to be in your leadership role, but please, I don't know, the best way for me to say it is, try not to give 100%, maybe give 95. You need to, or a little less, you have to give some time to yourself. I've made this mistake I've worked 50, 60, 70-hour weeks, and I did nothing but my job, my role at that particular time, because it was so much involved. And I found myself in a situation when COVID happened. I didn't have a diverse set of income in terms of diversified income stream, and things were a bit stressful. Turned around, but still, I want everyone that's watching the replay, etc., to learn from my mistake and just make sure you do what you can to start diversifying your income. If you are early in your manager journey or in the middle, at the end, it's never too late. Just take some quiet time to think about it. And if you need some more support and kind of going through what that might look like, then just reach out to me for a strategy session. We'll talk things out and figure out maybe what your next step should be. Now, I appreciate everybody for joining today and being present here on the live. Forensic Accountant, of course, always appreciate you being present also and having a wonderful dialogue and discussion about life as a professional, life as a leader, and what you should do in these type of situations when they actually come up, because it can be very, very challenging when you are in these contentious situations and you're trying to figure out, well, how do I manage any disruptions in a meeting, or what should I do if my manager cannot manage a disruption in a meeting? These are excellent times to help you be able to advance in your career, and then also be able to accelerate yourself and put yourself in a position as someone that communicates at a higher level than your peers. So I appreciate you all for being present today. Appreciate your Forensic Accountant. As I mentioned, I have the video. I'm going to take a look at our conversation and talk a bit more about that on one of my lives this week. And I will definitely give you a shout out in it if you're not able to join. We'll talk a little bit more about it, and you can watch it on the replay if you can. But I appreciate you all being here. Make sure a couple videos that may help you as it relates to managing these type of conversation or disruptions at work. Definitely check out the videos I have on tone of voice. That is something that I would absolutely say will help you when you're trying to manage disruptions in meetings. And then also having difficult conversations. That helps you too, especially as it relates to eye contact. Remember my cowboy analogy. If you have not heard the cowboy analogy, then you have not watched enough of my videos. So make sure you go back and watch some of them. I talk about the cowboy analogy all the time. I was just working with a corporate client and helping their leadership team yesterday. And I told them, if you don't remember anything at all as it relates to developing your executive presence and really controlling the conversation, you have to remember the cowboy. Like, you have to remember it. So if you haven't watched Cowboy, check out my replays on my lives. Live page is where most of the comments and most of my lives are. I mean, I'm having a lot more videos. I am going to start transitioning into pre-recorded videos, but that will be in conjunction with my lives. So my lives will still be Tuesday through Friday unless something happens and I'm really sick, like I'm sick now, but I'm getting a little bit better. All right, so Forensic Accountant said, we'll do it again. Hopefully you're still doing your thing when my book comes out. Oh, when your book comes out. Yes, I still will be. I'm not going anywhere. But yes, absolutely. So whenever you are at that point, when you are releasing your book, feel free to let me know, because I would be happy to mention the book whenever you're at that point. Just let me know or contact me. And I'm on Dr. Jacinta Lamantai at LinkedIn, at Excite Excellence on Instagram, and then of course I'm here on YouTube. But yeah, let me know. Absolutely, I would be more than happy to at least advocate for your book and support you. Let me know what you're going to be talking about, all those exciting things. I have a book coming up, hopefully this year or early next year. We'll see how things go, so I know how the book process is. It takes a while, but let me know when you're ready to release your book. Be happy to mention it and talk about it to the audience, because I'm sure it will be very, very helpful as it relates to leadership or whatever it is that you decide that you want to talk about. So just let me know. I'd be happy to promote it for you. All right. Well, thank you all so much for being here today. I appreciate you as always. Thank you for being the best part of my channel to help my channel to grow. And feel free to share this with some of your colleagues, your friends. If you've liked this discussion that we've had so far, then feel free to like the video. It does actually help it to get out to more individuals. And you're always welcome to subscribe to the channel if this is where you feel like you want to be. I do provide a lot of great insights as it relates to leadership, as I mentioned in the very beginning. And I was having a conversation with another individual that, yes, my target audience in terms of who I work with specifically is women in leadership, but leadership transcends gender. It doesn't matter if you're a male in leadership, a woman in leadership. my goal and mission is to help you communicate at that higher level, regardless of what gender that you are, especially here on my YouTube channel. So I appreciate you all being present and being here. And if you have any questions, you have any topics, let me know in the comments. I will absolutely do a video for you, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye for now.